What's good, Eagles fans? Welcome back to another edition of Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to turn it to the game. You guys know who I am. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. If you guys don't know who I am, super grateful for you guys being here. Grateful for you guys giving me the time of day. I know you guys have a ton of options when it comes to the content, so I want to make sure I always give you guys my utmost effort when it comes to this thing. Now, I want to talk to you guys about the Eagles wide receiver situation, in particular, the wide receiver 3 position. Now, obviously, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, WR1, WR2. But when it comes to WR3, the field is wide open. You have Paris Campbell on the roster, who they brought in as a free agent. You have Johnny Wilson, who they drafted, I believe, in the 6th round or the 5th round. Then they have Brenton Covey, Anias Smith, who they drafted in the latter rounds of the 2024 draft, Joseph Nagata, Austin Watkins Jr., Shaquan Davis, Jacob Harris, and they also brought in John Ross. Here's the thing, though, about John Ross in particular. And this video is more so going to be focused on him, but we're going to touch on the wide receiver room in general. But I want to really put the light or the spotlight on John Ross for this particular reason. I've been seeing a lot of Eagles fans really excited about the notion of having a guy like John Ross on the roster, especially when you think about the kind of speed he brings to the table, right? John Ross, I think he broke the record, as a matter of fact. If I'm not mistaken, let's make sure I got my facts right. Former first round pick in the 2017 draft. He was drafted by the Bengals, and he spent 4 years in Cincinnati and didn't see a second contract from them, and was ultimately signed by the Giants in March of 2021. And his last game appearance was on December 12th in 2021 as well. He previously held the all-time record for the fastest 40-yard dash time in 4.22 seconds that was recently broken by Xavier Worthy, former Texas wide receiver, now plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And look, he has a ton of speed, John Ross, that is. He has a ton of speed. But if you ask me, I think Eagles fans would be remiss to put their hope in a guy like John Ross. The last time we've seen John Ross play NFL level football was December 12th of 2021. And when you think about his career in totality, John Ross hasn't really been a stat sheet stuffer despite being a first round pick. They drafted that man in the upper half of the first round of the 2017 draft, and we can make it very clear that he really didn't live up to those expectations. Let's just talk about his stats, right? Because they matter. In John Ross's very limited NFL career, he's put up only 957 total receiving yards and 11 touchdowns in 37 career games played. Let that sink in real quick before you get your hopes high for a guy like John Ross. Let that be known. And maybe you've done your research. Maybe you've looked up John Ross's stats, right? It's entirely plausible that you've done that. And the last thing I want to do is kind of tell you something you already know. But here's the reality. Although he has speed, what real impact has he had on the game in his limited career? Again, former first-round pick, and he has not ever lived up to that expectation. His best season was in 2019, where he only played 8 games and put up 506 yards. Maybe that would have been the coming out party for him, but he couldn't stay healthy long enough to get it done. And then 2020, you see the games played and the starts. Then he plays for the New York Giants for that one season. You see the stats. He hasn't been a high-impact player at all. But the Philadelphia Eagles still felt the need to take a shot on him. And I always respect teams for shooting. I respect teams for always trying to keep the competition high in the locker room. I'm not mad at that mindset. I'm not mad at that angle if you approach it from that angle. But if you approach it from the mindset that John Ross is going to come in and automatically be a high impact player, I think we need to really check the scoreboard on that. I think we really need to check the box score on that and really be honest with ourselves. Now, I want to be fair to him, though. He did sign a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles after showing flashes at their rookie camp, and now he's going to compete for a roster spot on the active roster. And again, he was drafted to be a number 1 receiver, right? He was drafted to be a number one receiver. I mean, you drafted a receiver in the first round. 9 times out of 10, you want him to be your number one, but that speed didn't necessarily translate into production. But that was in the WR1 role, right? So, although he was drafted in the first round, he's proven that he's not necessarily capable of wide receiver one responsibilities. But to be fair to him, what impact can he make potentially as a WR3 or WR4 or even special teams, especially when you put him in a room with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, along with all the other competitive guys like Johnny Wilson, Anias Smith, Britton Covey. You have guys on this roster who were practice squad guys who are trying to make this roster. Joseph Nagata has been on the Eagles practice squad for a long time. He's trying to make the active roster at some point. Paris Campbell, he's another guy that's trying to make this roster. He spent his career with the Giants. Then he spent most recently his career with the Colts. His most productive years were with the Colts. Obviously, he's not a number one or number two. He's definitely a number three receiver. Throughout his career, he's kind of been asked to do a little bit more than that, but he's really a number three receiver. And if you can put him in that role with the Philadelphia Eagles, if you can elevate a guy like Paris Campbell with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, you may get something out of him. Maybe you get something out of John Ross as well, but you have so many guys, younger guys as well, like Johnny Wilson and Naya Smith. Paris Campbell is even younger than him. Justin Nagadas, I think, is younger than him. You have guys who are younger who've actually been active in NFL circles. We haven't seen John Ross play since 2021. And even during that time, he wasn't really a productive player throughout his career. So if we haven't seen a guy for 3 years off an NFL field concerns me tremendously. And I'm not going to act like it doesn't. And I don't want you guys to pretend like it doesn't. I also don't want to rain on your parade. I also don't want you guys to think negatively about the situation. Again, he was previously asked throughout his career to try to be a number one receiver, hence being drafted in the first round. The Giants took a shot on him, thinking maybe a change of scenery could be necessary, right? But the fact of the matter is, regardless of where he was, be it Cincinnati for 4 seasons or the Giants for that 1 year, I think the Chiefs tried to bring him in at one point, and then he ended up retiring before he even touched the football field. Regardless, if he's not in the WR1 role and maybe a WR3 or wide receiver 4, could he make a splash? Could that speed be lethal? It all remains to be seen. But let me remind you guys of someone who we had on this roster who had tremendous speed, track speed, a guy that can take the top of a defense, so we thought. Quez Watkins. So when I think about it from that perspective, how valuable is speed if you can't do nothing with it? John Ross, could he be a guy on special teams? It's a possibility, but John Ross, I believe, is 28 years old. If I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure I do him justice. He's, yes, 28 years old, 5'11", 194 pounds. He's not a physical freak, right? The best thing he has at his disposal is the speed. And he was drafted in the top 10 of the 2017 draft. I'm sorry, he's a bust. You drafted in the top 10 and you haven't even had a 1,000-yard season. As a matter of fact, you haven't even put up 1,000 yards throughout your entire career. In totality, that's a bust. But can he be a number 3 receiver on the Philadelphia Eagles? My hopes are high. As a matter of fact, I feel more comfortable betting on Paris Campbell than I would betting on a guy like John Ross. And that's just my humble opinion. I know a lot of you guys may feel differently about this. I know some of you guys may say, damn, Tone, why are you being so damn negative? What's up with that? That's not your style. I don't think I'm being negative. I think I'm actually calling it how I see it. And I think I'm calling it as it's being shown to us. But again, I think my responsibility here is not only to call out what I see, but to also find the silver lining. And like I said, maybe him being a wide receiver 1 was the mistake the Bengals made, or the Giants, right? That was the mistake that was made, thinking he could be a number 1 receiver. Granted, That speed enamored people, especially at the combine when he broke that record. But like I said, the goal was to find the silver lining here, despite my perspective. Could he be an effective number 3 receiver in Philadelphia? Maybe. Could he be an effective number 4 receiver? Maybe using him in certain packages to try to get that speed on the field, try to get him in open space. It's a possibility. But you have guys on this roster who have some speed, like an Anias Smith, who has versatility, like an Anias Smith and a Brent Covey. You have guys on this roster like a Johnny Wilson, who's so physically imposing, you can't help but to see what he can do in NFL circles. You have other guys on this roster who are hungry. You have Paris Campbell, who has speed and can actually catch the ball and has years of being relatively productive in his role. So, John Ross, what's the expectation for you? Eagles fans, what's your expectation of John Ross? I promise you, I'm not trying to be down on this brother. I promise you, if he can continue to feed his family with NFL checks and be productive and find a role in the NFL, if not for the Philadelphia Eagles, if he can find a role in the NFL on another roster, hey, I'm always going to support a brother getting a paycheck. I'm always going to support a brother getting how he lived. But he retired and then came back 3 years later. Why? What is that about? And also, we talk about that speed. 3 years off from the game, what kind of shape is he in? Now, granted, the Eagles clearly liked what they saw because he came into rookie camp and they felt like he had something left in the gas tank. But you take 3 years off from a sport like the NFL, I don't know how effective you can be. I don't know if you still have that motor. I don't know. And the operative words are, I don't know if you have that same speed you had in yesteryears. But I'm going to remain optimistic, Eagles fans, despite my pessimism. I'm going to remain optimistic for your sake, because I know a lot of you guys are high on this addition. So I'm not going to crap on it, but I will acknowledge the reality as well. You see, we got to have some duality in this thing, right? We got to acknowledge the real, and then we compare it with our optimism and our feelings. And the real is John Ross has never been a productive receiver in the NFL. He has not ever lived up to the first round billing, the top 10 billing. The speed was never enough. Health was an issue. He retired. He spent 3 years away from the game. That's the real. That's the reality. But the optimism, my feelings, could he be productive in Philadelphia with that speed in the number 3 role rather than the number 1 role, he was originally supposed to be with the Bengals? Could he be a productive number 3 or 4 receiver? Could he be a utility guy you use in various packages to get him in open space with a lot of guys on the field, like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, with all that talent surrounding him, the Jalen Hurts dual threat ability? Could he find a way to be impactful in a limited role with guys like that on the field taking up most of the attention? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But I don't know. That's the thing, you guys. I don't know. But I'm going to always give you guys both sides of the coin. And I appreciate you guys for locking in for as long as you did. And I want you guys to comment below. Please tell me what you think of what I'm saying. Tell me if you agree. Tell me if you disagree. Tell me if you hate my freaking guts. Tell me if you love the ground I walk on. I appreciate all the love and the support you guys give me, because I can't take it for granted. And I want the honest truth from you guys. I want the real. Like I said, I'm always going to give you guys the real, and I'm going to pair it with my optimism. I want you guys to give me your real. I want you guys to give me your honest takes about John Ross being on the Philadelphia Eagles and whether or not he can make a real impact. And it's straight like that. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. You guys have been locked in on your dose of Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game.